So let's review the pathophysiology of coronary heart disease. We've also covered this in ExPhys 2, so if this probably looks familiar to you if you've taken the course. It's always good to review this because if you want to get your certification as a health fitness specialist or the clinical exercise specialist, you have to know cardiovascular disease pathophysiology. So if you look at the bottom left, you can see the plaque buildup in the narrowed coronary artery. We'll talk about how that plaque forms. So what happens with most heart attacks is that small blood clots regularly form throughout the body. And for a lot of us, they pose no consequence. But if you've got a significantly narrowed artery like a coronary artery, that blood clot can block off circulation in the heart. So you see that little piece right here in the heart where they've circled that. So once that area is deprived of oxygen and circulation, that tissue can die if it's longer than 60 minutes. And that can be how we end up with heart failure because that part of the heart is dead and it no longer functions. If the heart attack, the myocardial infarction, happens in a major vessel or further up in the vessels, then we're going to see perhaps death, or we're going to see a lot more heart damage done. But typically, a small blood clot's going to form that's going to block that narrowed artery. Sometimes that plaque can rupture and block the artery itself, but more commonly it's a small blood clot that forms. So let's go through the atherosclerotic process. So the endothelium, that's that innermost lining of the artery. So that becomes injured. Well, how does it become injured? There are multiple ways the endothelium can get injured. High blood pressure. We're going to talk about that in the next class. High blood sugar if someone has diabetes. Smoking is huge. Smoking causes injury to the endothelium. So the endothelium is injured in some way and growth factors are released. So it sets off an inflammatory process. So monocytes, inflammatory cells, they attach to that endothelium and they migrate to the intima, which is the intermuscular layer of the artery. So that's what takes up the cholesterol, then forms fatty streaks, particularly the LDL cholesterol. So if you can't remember which one is the good, which one is the bad cholesterol, the LDL, lousy, HDL, happy. So the LDL cholesterol is the type of cholesterol that gets taken up and it forms fatty streaks in the arteries. This is a lifelong process. Everybody has this to some degree. You know, they've done autopsies on small children and even they have some fatty streaks in their arteries. So it just, you know, how much of it you have depends on your genetics and your lifestyle, your diet. You know, do you eat foods that are high in saturated fat that tend to increase your LDL cholesterol? So, and also physical activity. So platelets come in and they adhere to the endothelium and growth factors are released. So once again, everything just kind of moves to that intima layer of the artery. Then what's called that fibromuscular plaque. So that is that thick plaque. It's formed and it narrows the lumen. So greater than 70% narrowing is considered coronary heart disease. So as I mentioned, everybody has this to some degree, but if your artery is only 20% narrowed, it's not going to cause you any problems versus it starts to be more than 70% narrowed. People go in, I've known people who've had angiograms, who've had heart disease. They can have an artery that's almost completely blocked. It can be 95% blocked. So yes, you can see how very easily if the artery is greater than 90% blocked, then it's very likely that a blood clot can obstruct blood flow. So what happens with heart disease? How do you know somebody has heart disease? Basically, we're looking for myocardial ischemia. So your myocardial oxygen demand from the heart is greater than the supply. You don't have this blood flow to the heart tissue because you've got all these blockages. So the atherosclerosis is the blockage. So people are symptomatic, They get what's called angina, angina pectoris, chest pain. Some people don't have symptoms, so they don't, they have heart disease, they have ischemia, but they don't have any symptoms. Myocardial ischemia can also be seen on the electrocardiogram. Angina, discomfort with men especially. There's the elephant sitting on my chest type of pain. Women don't get that type of chest pain. Women will have pain in their arms, in their jaw, in their shoulders, in their upper back, or they're just going to present with very bad fatigue, just unusual fatigue that just doesn't seem right for their levels of exertion. My friend had someone in cardiac rehab where the woman had pain in her jaw, so she went to the dentist, and the dentist referred her to the cardiac rehab facility. So angina can come on with stress of exercise, excitement, watching a big game on TV, temperature, particularly cold temperatures, large meals, lots of heart attacks on Thanksgiving, Christmas, Super Bowl Sunday, March Madness. Or people can have a coronary vasospasm, which is a lot less common. And as we mentioned, people will have ischemia. You will have tissue death if the myocardial tissue is deprived of oxygen longer than an hour, 60 minutes.